Hey everybody, welcome back to James Draws Everything. This is James, and we're continuing today with drawing every country in the world's flag, and we're getting ever so closer to the end. Our penultimate African episode, right? Which, if you don't know what my big $7 words mean, penultimate, second to last. So we're going to be doing South Africa today, and then we got one more after that, and we are done with Africa. So let's just get right down to it, and going to apologize ahead of time because I kind of already did this episode. You did? Well, yeah, sort of. This is kind of going to be one of those lessons of what's the old saying that, like, if you try something so many times and expect the same results, was it like it's insanity or something like that? So basically, everything South Africa did in kind of recent times, Zimbabwe / Rhodesia already did, so you think, with history and stuff, people, they learn from their mistakes, but sometimes that's just not the case. All right, so we're gonna have a lot of overlap here with that Rhodesia episode, because again, the histories, especially the modern histories, are so similar, and you get very similar results with both of them. All right, and I will say something about the flag. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think this has the most colors out of any flag, as far as like a flag that just has like a simple design to it, not like some crazy like picture with like multiple gradients in it. As far as just like a plain colored flag, South Africa takes that cake. Okay, so welcome to South Africa. I'm James. I will be your tour guide, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson on South Africa. And my history lesson might be a little bit different than the history lessons that you're taught in school or via the corporate press. But that's kind of how we always do it on this channel, right? And that's why you guys keep tuning in. You like them fresh takes, and I'll give you a fresh take on South Africa. So, some of the earliest human remains are actually found in South Africa. You get Bantu expansions coming in to this region. There's really not much of like a native population in South Africa. You do have the Khoisan people who are kind of at odds with the Bantus when the Bantus kind of come in and displace them. So not a lot there. The Khoisans are kind of like in the southwest portion. You got to remember what we're talking about as far as South Africa today. Like the state of South Africa was a lot of different things to a lot of different groups over a lot of different time periods. So a lot of differences, right? And with a lot of differences, right, always can lead to issues, right? If diversity not always a strength, because trying to hold a bunch of different colors, or well, yeah, I guess that too, colors, and I was gonna say cultures together with duct tape and bubble gum doesn't always produce desirable results. So the Europeans show up, and that's around like the 17th century. The Dutch are the first there, and they establish some ports kind of on like the trade routes, like the spice trade between Europe and the Far East, and that's where the city of Cape Town comes from. So it starts off as like a trading port, and then the British come in kind of like the 18th, 19th century, and they're at odds with the Dutch, right? So a lot of the issues with South Africa, it's not just like a white and black thing. It's a lot of it is kind of British and Dutch, right? And then even that, a Boer, right? That's what they call, the Dutch farmers that settled there. They kind of later, they're called Afrikaners. That's not just Dutch either. There's a lot of Germanic Boer people there as well. So you got a pretty big mix of race and ethnicity in South Africa, and the natives as well. I kind of touched on this a little bit before, but the Khoisans and the Bantus that came in much later, they had a lot of problems as well, right? Because they're not, kind of culturally the same people, different languages and all of that. So the Khoisans for the most part, coexisted with the Europeans. It's like the Bantu expansions later on that caused a lot of problems. And you'll hear different opinions on this, but a lot of people will claim that the Khoisans were there, but there's dispute over whether the Bantus or the Europeans were actually native to South Africa, because it was not really much of like a populated place, right? So when the Europeans arrived, they basically were the native South Africans, because there's really nothing there. Extremely sparsely populated, and again, not to say there wasn't any issues with the Khoisans there, but they were able to coexist much more peacefully with the Europeans than, say, like the Bantus did. So again, not black and white, I mean literally in this case, but much more complicated. You have all these sort of different groups with different interests, different cultures, religions, backgrounds, all that stuff. So the Boers kind of get displaced a little bit, so they kind of trekked north. They found some of their own republics up north, the Transvaal, the Orange Free State, and in the 19th century, you get a lot of wars with the Zulu people, that were trying to expand into South Africa. Again, this is important. They were trying to expand into South Africa. They were not native there. So it wasn't like, what they say like now. It wasn't like the Europeans in the Americas, right? Like displacing like the native people. So much more complicated history than the version that you're sold via Hollywood, corporate media, etc. And they clash with a lot of the Europeans there. Discovery of diamonds and gold, that kind of makes this place a desirable spot for a lot of European powers to try to mine those resources. It does lead to slavery, of course, but the British actually abolished slavery, believe it or not, right, in South Africa. But in the South African colony for Britain, almost isn't even really a colony, right? It's more of like a corporation. So you have the British South African Company there. So never really a colony, never really like a province of Britain. It's kind of just its own thing. And South Africa's always been kind of weird like that, because it's just it's hard to put into a box. It's hard to define, and it's of course very very charged by racial politics, even Cold War politics. So very difficult to have a conversation, a civil one, about South Africa, right? Because everybody kind of has very strong opinions on it. So, James draws everything. Just a little word for the wise. Don't bring up South Africa at the dinner table. You're gonna have some issues, right? So yeah, there's a series of wars, the Boer Wars. When people talk about the Boer Wars, they probably talk about the second one that's in 1899 to 1902. And that kind of defeats the Dutch Afrikaner republics, and it becomes more of a union of South Africa, and it's kind of part of the British Commonwealth, but again, never really a colony, so it's more of a self-governing sort of corporation. And if you're up to speed on what the British were doing, right, as far as basically kind of spreading their empire across the globe. And what the British do when they do that, right? They're very good at relocating peoples, right? So the Russians make vodka, the Swiss make chocolates, the British move people. All right, so the British they bring a lot of Indian labor here, right? So the Indians are, they're kind of, seen as, let's face it, like one of the lower classes. So they kind of partner up with a lot of the Africans there. So you start getting a lot of growing racial resentment. But it is a very rich colony, right? A functioning colony. And but as far as their government and stuff, it's basically like a whites only as far as participation in that government. And so of course that's gonna create some resentment. But again, this becomes complicated because there was no government there, right? Because, well, first there was barely any people there before the Europeans arrived, but it wasn't like there were democratic systems in place with the very select few Khoisan populations that were there, civilizations. And then of course, the black, Zulus, Bantu speaking peoples that came in after, they were coming into something that the Dutch and the British had already built. So again, a little bit more complicated than what you are told, but yeah, a lot of parallels, again with British Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. But Zimbabwe comes a little bit later. But so again, early 20th century is kind of where you see this union of South Africa. So basically, basically settles on what are its modern borders. Becomes a fully self-governing republic in 1961, where it was kind of just like colony adjacent to Britain before that. In 1948, the National Party was voted into power, and that's where you see apartheid instituted, right? Can't really talk about South Africa without talking about apartheid. So it, it favors the white minority and, over all other groups. And that's kind of where you see the formation of the ANC, the African National Congress. And, that leads the resistance to apartheid. That's where Nelson Mandela gets his start. And Mandela, he's always kind of talked about as freedom fighter, he's up there with the Gandhis or the Martin Luther Kings as far as sort of these Western liberal heroes. But what they always kind of conveniently leave out is that he was a communist, right? So he was backed by communists, and communism is certainly not native to Africa, right? So it's not like you're just you're just shackling or getting free of like the colonial shackles. Now you're basically trading one form of colonialism for another, right? So the Western world kind of turns on South Africa, right, and kind of puts them into the arms of the communists, even though the Western world is fighting the communists at the time. The racial stuff, that's that kind of took precedent over that, and the West was disgusted by that. So basically leads to the end of apartheid, and the rise of like the ANC into government. And so they do hold their first elections, multiracial elections, right? Because under apartheid, the blacks couldn't vote, and brought in an ANC-ruled government, and then everything was pretty much peaceful after that. When Mandela was elected their first president after he was in jail for quite a while for jaywalking. I made up some of that stuff. No, he was not in jail for jaywalking. He was he was a terrorist. I don't really understand how that would be controversial to say that. I know the hokey cliche, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, blah blah blah. But again, I don't extend any sympathy whatsoever to communists. And when the ANC did finally come into power, just like Rhodesia, massive hyperinflation. South Africa was one of the richest countries in Africa, and still are today, just due to that infrastructure that the British and the Boers, Dutch, Afrikaners built before that. But a lot of that is crumbling now, right? Because it's probably not controversial to say this, but you see it on the news every now and then. They're basically killing off the productive class, right? Because that vengeance politics, kill the Boer, kill the white farmer. Well, they did kill a lot of them, right? And now they can't eat, right? Just like Rhodesia. And that is kind of one of the sad things, right? Because again, I mentioned, everything's a trade-off, right? You can't just look at things in black and white, no pun intended. But what are you getting rid of, and then what are you replacing it with? And in South Africa, there may have been issues there, but there was again kind of one of those things too, where I talked about this in the Mozambique episode, and they actually did have a black leader there, and he said they were not ready for politics, right? Like, so you can't just force democracy onto people. Rhodesia was a little bit better about this than South Africa, where South Africa was more of like a strict apartheid segregation program, whereas Rhodesia was not. They did have like a gradual like plan in place to because they want people that have stakes in the game to be involved in the politique, right? So, but yeah, so Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, that falls first, and they kill all their white farmers, and didn't just affect them, right? Because Rhodesia was a net exporter of grain. So a lot of the reasons why Africa starved was because, Rhodesia was making all the food, right? And, when their communist leader took over, Mugabe, right, communist adjacent, if you want to be fair, they just, their currency became completely worthless overnight, massive hyperinflation, massive starvation. And you think South Africa would take a look at that, because it's only right, north of their border. It's not like this is like, half a world away. It's right there, and they could look and say, and you know what, maybe we won't do that. But I usually don't say history repeats itself, but I guess in this way it kind of does, and it is sort of bad because they're going through a lot of that now. A lot of those troubles were kill the Boer. I'm sure you've seen the song. You've seen like pictures of South Africa 30 years ago and pictures of the same places now. The buildings falling apart, grass growing through the roads, people starving. So it was a trade-off in my opinion. Probably not a not a good one. But yeah, it'll remain to be seen what happens with South Africa, because I know there's some pressure on them, from the current administration in the United States to kind of clean up the act and cut it out with the white genocide stuff. But that's, of course, always controversial to talk about. But I don't know how you could talk about this country without being controversial, right? And what did I say before? This is not a dinner. South Africa is not a dinner table topic, all right? So with all that controversy out of the way, let's talk about the flag, because, again, there's a lot of colors here, right? We got red, green, white, blue, black, yellow, so quite a bit. And the red and the blue, they're kind of separated by like a green Y there. The flag colors actually do not have any official symbolism, but the Y, see the Y that the green makes, that stands for the convergence of diverse elements within a South African society, of which there are certainly many. And then taking the road ahead in unity, right? So kind of that road right there. Black, yellow, and green, those are on the flags of the ANC, the African National Congress. And then the red, white, and blue are colors of the former colonizers there, the Netherlands and the UK. So a whole hodgepodge of stuff, right? And a whole hodgepodge of history, a whole hodgepodge of colors on this flag. Just a good old hodgepodge episode, right? So, and yeah, I mentioned before, it's one of only 2 national flags that has 6 colors as part of its primary design. The other is also in Africa, South Sudan. So that is South Africa. I'd recommend checking out my Zimbabwe episode for a little bit more on this. But yeah, it's almost the exact same history, just with some slight differences. But I'll leave you with that. So let me know what you think. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next episode.